a poetry night is a beautiful thing to witness, so thank you all for coming. My name is Courtney Terry. I work at the public library here in McMinnville, and we partner every month on the first Thursday at 6 p.m. with Dan and Nancy, owners of the gallery at 10 Oaks, to hold these poetry nights. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, thank you, all of you for coming tonight. My name's Courtney. I work here at the McMinnville Public Library. This is actually a monthly program that we have. On the first Thursday of every month, we host a poetry, reading, and open mic at the gallery at 10 Oaks in the parking lot by El Primo next to 7-Eleven and across from Linfield. Just get the geographic location. So we are there at 6 o'clock on the first Thursday of every month. It's a gorgeous space, but for this particularly special occasion, we felt we needed to go a little bit bigger. So for the record, next month, the first Thursday in May, we will be back at the gallery. It is National Poetry Month. We are bringing back our spring poetry contest for the library. And the theme, which I made up, is Literary Spring. And I don't know how you would interpret that. That's the poet's job. So that's however you may interpret that. That's our theme. We're allowing 2 entries per person, unpublished work. It will be, our judges will be library staff. And so tell your friends. It's really fun. And then so the winning poems will be the featured reading for our June poetry night here at the gallery at 10 Oaks. So here.
No, where is this event?
The event, so the contest, it goes from March 21st to May 21st. So anytime between then you can turn in a poem. And then the first Thursday in June, winners of the poetry contest will be the featured reader. And in terms of additional poetry events, Oaks on April 18th at 6 o'clock, and we're doing another Paintings to Poems, which if you haven't done that before, it's really fun. We basically turn you loose throughout the gallery so you can find a work of art that's particularly inspiring to you, and then we make you write a poem about it right then. You have like 45 minutes, but right then. And then so for third Friday, which is April 19th, they have the Third on Third program, which is an art and wine walk, and we will have a group of some of our poetry night regulars who will be set up at the Ransom tasting room right next to Purano and Daughters on 3rd Street, and they will be offering a poetry while you wait as a fundraiser for adult programming like this one, which is supported through our Friends of the Library organization. So if you're wandering down 3rd Street on the 3rd, you can stop by and you can give them any topic that you want and walk away and come back an hour later and they will have written a poem just for you based on the topic of your choice. We've done it a few times now and we've gotten everything from Sisters Weekend to, there was a lady who asked for a poem for her daughter's wedding, to anything. So I'm sorry for the volunteers that are here and going to be participating, but come and bring your poetry challenges. They are ready for them. You may notice we do have the Friends of the Library here. If you're not already a Friends member, we would really hope you'd talk to Lindsay, who can tell you all the wonderful benefits of being a Friends member. Did I mention that the Friends of the Library have made this possible? So, yes, thank you. And are we doing the membership special today?
I think we might be.
Yes. Jenny, the library director, has stepped in with her OLCC permit, and she will be pouring wine, but you may need to buy a friend's membership. It's $10 for an individual or $15 for the year for a family, so it's a good investment in your library. And so tonight we'll have Kim do his reading, and then afterwards we'll open it up for the open mic. If you haven't heard already, you can still sign up at the table in the back. And yeah, it's going to be a wonderful evening. That's all I have to say. Thank you all so much for coming. And we have Kim Stafford, the Oregon Poet Laureate. Oh, that's what I'm going to have to. So the Oregon Poet Laureate is a state-run program. It is paid for by the Oregon Cultural Trust, the Oregon Arts Commission. I had a blurb that I'm supposed to read and I didn't, but it's if you support arts and cultural organizations in our state, they help programs like the Oregon Poet Laureate. It's kind of like PBS and like viewers like you. Same thing, except you bring arts and culture and poetry to all over Oregon. So thank you for being here, Kim, and I'll have you take it away.
Courtney, thank you all for coming, especially those standing. Wine may help a little bit down the road. I want to start with a poem in homage to my 5th grade teacher. Because I was doing a program some years ago at the at the Tiger Public Library, and there was this very distinguished woman in the back, and there was just something about her, this kind of a halo, you know, she had an aura. And so after the program, I went back and I said, help me remember. And she said, I was your 5th grade teacher. I'm Mrs. Smith, and I have a story to tell you. When we had the parent-teacher conference, your father, the great poet, I told him, Kim is a dreamer. He's often gazing out the window, and your father said, make him pay attention. And I said to your father, when it's time, he'll pay attention. I got down on my knees and thanked her for covering for me. So I have this poem to honor her called Mrs. Smith, 1959. Her name, the way she stood, her station in the larger world may not have been known, but to me, to us, then 5th grade Cold War, she was our calm. One trance-like afternoon, she read to us from a little book of terrors, John Hershey, Hiroshima. Could this be happening? A child with skin falling away, a mother clawing through rubble. We saw, were blinded by death and our nation's act. In her voice, without judgment, but deep sorrow. When Mrs. Smith looked over the top of the book, and we were a silence waiting, she said, this is about what we must never do again. How many heroes does one life need? For me, that one. She gave lessons no one else in all my years of schooling touched. By the time she closed the book, I had become a child neither television, nor president, nor any strident voice could dissuade from loyalty to the human way those children walked among ruins in the war-torn world. Poor Mrs. Smith. I've been carrying around this poem to honor all my relations, and it's such, the governor gave me such a great job. I'm just a sitting duck. You know, there's this event request form. It takes about 5 minutes to fill out, and then here they come. You know, so I'm going this month to the Sisters Madras, Redmond, Bend, Albany, Ashland, Cottage Grove, Eugene, and back to McMinnville for the Terrar Festival. So all my relations, that's a big all. So I want to begin with this little blessing. All my relations. I want to thank all my relations for this chance to be on earth in her time of flourishing. to thank the first people of this place, to honor their sovereignty in long and continuing relation, still teaching us how we might be here together. To thank my mother and father, sun and moon, for setting me forth before their own passing on. To thank my grandmother, who listened to me so eloquently, I learned to listen to my own heart and mind, to find stories and songs there. To thank my family and friends and old citizens and travelers who study and work for deeper kinship in this place with one another and with all creatures, one earth, visible, palpable, fragile, intricate, resonant, in need of our better stories. I want to thank you who have gathered to receive what I have carried here, in hope that something I have may meet something you need, so all our relations may be strengthened for this life we live together. Quiero agradecer a todas mis relaciones por esta oportunidad de estar en la tierra en su época de florecimiento. Agradecer las primeras personas de este lugar, honrar su soberanía en largo y continuando la relación, nos sigue enseñando cómo podríamos estar aquí juntos. A friend of mine from Peru is translating my poems into Spanish, and they become so much more beautiful. I'm just humbled. So pretty soon we'll have a little book of English and Spanish. So I want to just start with some ideas. We're here to do poems and the magic of the harp. Much good things to come, but I just want to put a few ideas out here. Cornel West had this idea that's become very important to me. Impatience with evil, but patience with people. So, our country is very polarized, where people think they're on opposite sides and they can't agree and so on. So, impatience with terror, with evil, with cruelty, with greed, but patience with people. I like that. And then, put this out there. Our son, when he was about 10 years old, he's a philosophy major now, and you can see the seeds of it in his early exploits. One day at the dinner table, he just burst out. He said, "Dad, we didn't become human when we invented tools, because when you use a tool, you just look at the tool. We became human when we looked across the fire into each other's eyes and told stories." And I feel like that's what something like this is taking us back to, the ring around the fire, where, a poem is about as long as your airtime across the fire. You have one little thing to say. Another Guthrieism, we were riding our bikes along the bike path, and the sun, it was about this time of year, the sun was flickering in our eyes, and he turned around and said, "Dad, what if the sun is doing Morse code, telling us the meaning of life?" Yeah, that's not pretty good. But then he turned around a little bit later and said, "But Dad, every day would be a different message. Maybe there are thousands of meanings of life." And I thought, okay, that's my job as Poet Laureate. There are thousands of meanings of life. We must bring them all forth. Bring them all forth. Because, I was saying to the students at the high school today, there's certain stories that could only come into the world through you. And it's not that you're anything great, but the story is great. And you're the conduit, and you must be open. My father used to say, you can legislate freedom of speech, but you have to learn how to do it. You have to learn how to be free and eloquent and make your voice a big thing. Okay, one of my students says, put your rage on the page. Don't fight it. Write it. Okay, so a few things about poetry. Number one, you can't make money doing it. One of the things writers say is, if you do this long enough, you can work your way up into the high two figures. But what that means is, you are free. You are free. No one is going to tell you how to do it. You get to decide how you do it. And you will be paid in other ways. Compensation comes in other ways. I remember one of my friends was going to Russia, and he hired a Russian translator to translate one of my poems into Russian. So when people said, "Tell us about your country," he could say, "Here." That is compensation. Another person, "I'm reading your book to my grandmother every night." That is compensation. So this exchange, the gift exchange, poetry is big in that. So that's one thing. Can't make money, but you can be compensated. Another thing, nobody quite understands poetry. The teacher reads a poem that she loves to the class, and they don't love it. And then she reads a poem that she doesn't love, and they love it. So, and one day she loves it, the next day she doesn't. So poetry, it's volatile, it's alive, it's vibrant. And the last thing about poetry is a luxury that could save your life. It is a luxury. I was talking to one of my students who, she started out homeless, she was a migrant, worker, and she said one time her dad saw her reading a poem, and she said, poems are for rich people. You should be working. So this idea that poetry is this extra thing that you don't need, but it could save your life. If you get the right poem at the right time, it could save your life. Okay, back into poetry. I want to read this poem by Vicki Lynn Smith, 3rd grade, Wallowa County, 1978. I've carried this poem a lot of miles. And the assignment I gave was, what if you woke up and you were old? What would it be like? What would it sound like? What would it feel like? And one of the students said, you mean like 30? No, I'm talking about... So Vicki Lynn misunderstood the assignment, and that often results in a better poem. The assignment poorly understood is a great... So she wrote, I was old. God woke up and he heard a dinosaur, but he was old, and he said to myself, how come he am in the old day? How come? He don't know why. And then I died, and he died for a little while, and then he came out of my graveyard, and he went back to sleep, and he died again, and he woke up, and then he was young, and he loved to die young, and the end. That everybody wanted to end their poem, and the end. Life goes on, but the poem ends. How are you going to deal with that? And I realized, as an English teacher, I would say, well, Vicki Lynn, we don't say he am. But she's talking about God, so maybe you do. So I just carry this poem because it reminds me, oh, that's right, we can be free. That's right, freedom of expression means doing what you want, the way you want it. Just, being in a 4th grade class one time years ago, and I gave a prompt, and one of the students said with a puzzled brow, can we use our imaginations? And it broke my heart. What's happened to my country? Okay, I'm going to read one other thing here, and then I'm going to invite Bethany out to do some magic. This is a statement by my predecessor, the 8th Poet Laureate, Elizabeth Woody. How many people saw Elizabeth? Yeah. She traveled around. She's Navajo, Wasco. She's the director of the Warm Springs Museum now. And in her last reading, last May, she said something that's kind of become my watchword. She said, the more I do this, the less it's about what the poem is, and the more it's about who the poem serves. So it's not that the poem is this exquisite, famous, successful Pulitzer Prize winning artifact. It's that this poem found a way to help someone, found a way to serve someone. And years ago, she wrote me a letter. Remember letters? This was 1993. Dear Kim, our people have a genius or great intelligence, or we are part of a great intelligence that shows us what we must do. It doesn't matter to whom it speaks bloodwise. If we love and honor one another, the experience grows and cycles back, and with less effort than when we first consciously tried to acquire knowledge, things fall in place. The earth and being has a voice and its own requirements that really is stronger than weakness or loneliness or even greed in all its forms. I'm learning myself all the time, and I'm grateful, even though I feel my limits nagging at me. I wanted to tell you this a while back, yet I guess now is all right. So to put that much care into the way words fit together for one person in a letter, that's a precious thing. Bethany is going to do a piece, and then we'll do a piece together, and then it's going to go back and forth a little bit.
I will bring a cup of water. It's the best that I can offer. In the dusk of coming night, there is evidence of light. With the pattering of rain, let us bow as if in grace. Consider all the ways we heal and how a heart can break. Oh, abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now. Let us ponder the unknown, what is hidden and what's whole, and finally learn to travel at the speed of our own souls. There is a living water, a spirit cutting through, always changing, always making all things new. Oh, abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now. There are things I cannot prove, still somehow I know it's like a message in a bottle that some unseen hand has thrown. You don't have to be afraid, you don't have to walk alone. I don't know, but I suspect that it will feel like home. Oh, abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now.
Every chance I get, any place I fit, in a cleft of grit, in ravine or pit, by ancient wit, my husk I split. I am the seed. I fell to the ground without a sound, by rainfall drowned, by sunlight found, by wonder crowned, through luck profound. I am the seed. After bout of grief, after fiery thief, though life is brief, I sprout relief with tiny leaf. Beyond belief, I am the seed. I am the seed, small as a bead. Tell me your need, your hunger, I'll feed. Any trouble you're in, I will begin. I am the seed. Up I rise to seek the prize from all that dies, small and wise, before your eyes. I am the seed. I'm addicted to harps now. Why would I do it without a harp? Thank you, Bethany. Thank you. And we'll come back at the end. Yeah. So, why do we need poetry? Why? Well, I got an email from someone up in Hood River who said, I was up at the cemetery at Topdish and Yakba, and there was a poem on the stone. Someone had chiseled it word by word into the stone. And I need to know what this poem is. Where did this come from? I think you've heard this poem. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glint on snow. When you wake in the morning hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the soft starlight at night. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. So I had to track this down. Well, back in 1932, there was a woman. She'd never written a poem before. Her name was Mary Fry. She lived in Baltimore, and she had a renter in her house who was a refugee from the Holocaust. And this young woman said to Mary, I wish I could stand at my mother's grave. Because her mother didn't get away. And so Mary Fry, she got a paper sack and a pencil. And just for the first time, she started writing this poem. And then she just gave it away. It was never copyrighted for years until dear Abby figured out who it was. The poem went forth without her name. And, this poem has been read in Belfast in the Troubles, in Kosovo. The poem travels. It came through Mary Fry. and then it belongs to everybody. So my ambition as a poet is to become anonymous. Wouldn't that be great? People just have this poem or song. So in keeping with that idea and with Elizabeth Woody's idea of a poem for someone, I want to read a few poems for people. And this first one is for my counterpart, the Poet Laureate of Washington State, Claudia Castro Luna, who's from Salvador. And she had gone back to Salvador to visit her dad, who's not well, and it was very kind of dicey still to be there. And she was driving back to the airport, and she stopped in this little ravine, and there was a woman there holding her daughter in her arms, selling little jars of honey. And it was just this beautiful, out of a war-torn country. Some of the war had missed this place. And so she got the honey, and she brought it back, and then at the border, it was seized. So I decided I would write a poem for the customs agent. Try to bring him around. So, for the customs agent who seized Claudia's jar of honey from El Salvador. Para probar, she said. Taste it. Let it sizzle on your tongue. Take it home smuggled in your dark pocket, and with a spoon drip to the tongues of your children slow sips of joy, so they may know how sweet my country was, in spite of war and sorrow. Tell your children about the ravine of flowers the soldiers missed, but the bees swarmed, humming and humming, zumbador y zumbador. Remind them how a mother could sit by the road with her daughter in her arms and a few jars of true gold. How my coins in her brown hand meant enough for this day, even though her man was gone, even though your law would take this elixir from me, even though there will always be war, but always flowers, bees, mothers, and your children. And if you have no children, if you do not wish to think of war or my country with a woman by the road, still, I beg you, taste this honey. Let the sticky song of 1,000 bees give your body the oldest, deepest pleasure. Do not lose your chance to know how sweet my country once was, in spite of war and sorrow, a pesar de la guerra y el dolor. I guess I kind of felt that one. Well, thank you. Sharon, Xavier. Okay, so, I'm getting older, so I get to see the doctor once in a while. And so the doctor's asking me these questions, and naturally it just turns into a poem, You can't help that. Poems everywhere can be written. And so this is called Poetry Doctor, where I took his catechism, sort of applied it to poetry. Poetry Doctor. How do you feel? How exactly have you learned to feel, to be touched, to apprehend? These twinges you have of compassion, empathy, pain, how long have you had them? Have they grown more intense with age? Do they manifest at sunset, at dawn, in the presence of beauty, of suffering? Does your heart ever skip? Do you ever feel dizzy with delight? Has the grace of a few right words ever blurred your vision, caught your breath? Has your heart ever become a drum when the song's words told you who you are? I'm afraid my diagnosis must remain incomplete without some further tests. Pablo, Basho, Emily. So let's see. Okay, and then I've been writing blessings. Blessings. I think this is a neglected genre, the blessing. We have the manifesto, the rant, the essay, the poem, story, but the blessing. So this is a blessing for teachers, my people, my heroes, my friends. You are a teacher because helplessly you love the invisible future thinly disguised as a child who does not yet know her power or his gift, and it is up to you to create conditions where these wonders may be revealed. So, alchemy in a crowded room, transmuting the lead of device-medicated torpor to the gold of fevered engagement with the self, each other, and the earth. This is your mission, should you choose to accept it. A teacher, you befriend the invisible future by looking into the eyes of beginners, and there find the glimmer, the shimmer, the glance outward from reticence to a few words, from a few words to a story bristling with thought. Knowledge is a fossil we turn over in our hands, but learning is the living water for the young we ladle out by looking into their eyes, those children entrusted to us by the hard world. So for teachers, so speaking of poems for people, I have to sing a song for my goddaughter, Anna. It was a long time ago. There you are. Dandelion, daisy, marigold, bachelor button blue. It's a ladybug beetle decked out in red, sipping from the dew. With moss for a napkin, a stick for a spoon, a nutshell for a bowl. We'll feast all night by the pale moonlight, says Mr. to Mrs. Mole. And the crickets were singing later that night. They began to chant, Anna, come out, it's Anna we want, Anna Colina Moran. Now Anna, come over, don't be afraid, the grass is shining with dew. Anna, come over, roll in the clover, we're waiting out here for you. So one time when Anna was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, we were visiting, and Anna just announced at dinner, I'm going home with my godparents. And her parents said, well, better get your suitcase, you know, you can't fight it. I guess they learned that by then, they can't fight it. So Anna got in the car, and we were driving around, we were kind of circling, you know. Anna was talking about all the great stuff we were going to do and everything, and then she looked outside and said, we're still in McMinnville, aren't we? I said, yeah. And there was a pause, and she said, and you're probably taking me home. Yes, Anna, we're taking you home. So that was a very sweet time. Okay. Okay, speaking of for someone, this is for Courtney. This is a poem for libraries. And it's written by Julia Donaldson in Scotland. It's just a wonderful thing. Now, I think this could happen in McMinnville. So in Edinburgh, they were having the Edinburgh Book Festival, and some people were standing in line to get their tickets, and one of them was my friend Larry, and then someone from Switzerland or something, and this person from Switzerland said, where is your poetry library? And the people said, well, we don't have one. And Larry said, shall we start one? So they started. It's this exquisite thing on a little side street, you know, with wonderful books, and they have a book group that consists of a book going by mail from lonely person to lonely person, and they have writing group, they have all kinds of things. So this poem was written there. It's called I Opened a Book. I opened a book, and in I strode. Now nobody can find me. I left my chair, my house, and my road, and my town and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak. I've slipped on the ring. I've swallowed the magic potion. I've fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived in a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends, and shared their tears and laughter, and I followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book, and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. Okay, so there's a few more poems here. Let's see. So one of the places I went was the Columbia River Prison. And I went with a guy named Johnny Stallings, who has been volunteering for 8 years, going to the prison once a week, just to talk to the guys. And this is the way he does it. So, sitting in a circle, maybe a dozen guys, and Johnny looks around, he sees somebody he doesn't know. He says, "Hi, I'm Johnny, what's your name?" "My name's Jamie." "Oh, where are you from, Jamie?" "Newport." Well, Jamie, I just have a question for you. What is the nature of the love that is the foundation of your entire universe? Just kind of a pause, and then Jamie just launches into this aria. It's like he's been waiting all his life to be asked. And it goes on for 30 minutes. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I just thought, so you can be a person in a prison, but anywhere you can be a story imprisoned in a person who hasn't been asked, hasn't asked themselves. Come forth, little story, come forth. So I wrote a poem for Jamie. It's called The Lost and Found People, which was his phrase for, he was homeless in Newport, he worked at a fish plant, he was sleeping rough, and then alcohol, sent him over the edge. And he's really a cool artist. He got out some of his drawings. They were amazing. He was drawing these portraits where every hair, with a ballpoint pen, like 3,000 hairs on this beautiful rendition. And so Lost and Found People. That's what Jamie called them when we met in prison, and he spoke of love. There was this great big woman, he said, big heart, trouble getting around, so I helped her. We went to all the homeless camps. Round up the first people, the native people, the lost and found people. Got them on a bus to the Sundance in Wyoming, where you have to bleed to make it real, to let the Creator see you. Just look up into the sky, into the sun. Let go all the bad you've done. Stand on the ground on the earth. Open your heart to who you are. Lost and found, lost and found. I was lost and I was found. Then Jamie was silent for a time. There was a light around him, where he sat in that flimsy prison chair. That light came from the woman he helped. It came from the sun. It came from his heart, first hurt when he was young. It came from what he still has to do. He carried that light. I carry it. I give his light to you.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's Jamie. Okay, why don't we have a little Q&A, and then I'll do one more poem, and then we'll do one together, okay? Questions, rebuttals, requests, demands, any about life, poetry, writing, any questions? Yes,
Do
please.
you get up before everybody else in the household after you're dead?
I do. For years I resisted. My dad, we never saw him write, because he got up at 3 or 4. But then on January 1st of 2014, which was the William Stafford centennial, I made a vow. I will try my daddy's writing practice for a year. And his writing practice is 4 parts. Write the date, write some boring prose. Very important to write you're writing before you have to write well. So you're just scribbling, I remember that, I wonder this, yesterday we had dinner with so, And then pause and write a thought, or a question, or a koan, Some of my dads are, when the snake tried to go straight, it didn't get anywhere. Just a little enigma. I'll be Pavlov, you be the dog. It takes all kinds to make a world, but there's an oversupply of some. A lot of them are kind of catty like this, but some of them are tragic. Like, it is legitimate to crawl after the wings are broken. I just long to ask my daddy, what broke your wings? So that's a little thought, and it's the kind of thing that, for me, that's the first line of a poem. But he just left it. It was his portal to what's beyond. And then the 4th part, he'd write a poem. So I've been trying that, and now I'm addicted. I'm addicted. The day is not complete without.
So do you have coffee first?
I have coffee during. Yeah, coffee, very important. But what I find is, it's my appointment with myself. The rest of the day, let's make the list. Email, phone, errands, deadlines, meetings, on and on and on. And so before all that, I want to have a meeting with myself. I want to settle my accounts. If there's something I'm upset about, angry, regretful, confused, I'm going to write about it. I'm going to settle my accounts so I can go into the day with equanimity.
Oh,
That's mine.
yeah.
I was just wondering how you open the eyes to young ones to enjoy and love poetry besides just sharing. Is there another way?
Yeah, well, I was with the fourth graders in Salem on Monday at Queen of Peace Catholic School, and I had them write a poem for someone. And I can almost quote one of them. Beautiful little poem. This little boy, fourth grade boy, he wrote a poem titled James. There are 7 continents. There are 8 oceans. There are billions of stars. There are 7 billion people. And I met you. Isn't that beautiful? So they're opening me. I think, as I read poems to them, they were, I haven't seen that. I didn't see that in the middle school. More disguised.
I
But,
was going to say more like teenagers.
yeah, that's right. Well, teenagers are fourth graders disguised as teenagers. The heart's still in there. Another question? Anyone? Yes, please.
I have a question about as Oregon Poet Laureate, how does that kind of work? Do they send you a list of places
No.
they want you to go to, or do you just kind of wing it?
Oregon Cultural Trust website, you go to Poet Laureate, drop down to calendar, event request form, here's who I am, here's what I want them to do. And I've only said no to one thing. Will you help our school write a play in verse? That's not my strength. So I came to the school and did other things, but I can do that. Yeah, and my job description says up to 20 events a year. I'm at 83. 33 in April. And I think next year I'm going to pull back a little bit and try to do some projects. Try to, decide some resources that will last beyond me. Okay? Okay, yeah, please.
What are you reading now?
What am I reading? Oh, man, I got some books at the AWP, the 14,000 Writers. There's a magazine I love called Pilgrimage, Place, Spirit, Story. Let's see, what else? I'm reading Naomi Shihab Nye, poet. I'm rereading some Whitman, Song of Myself. Listening to songs. I'm doing mostly short things because of my calendar. Always a good question. What are you reading?
I just read The Milkman.
Oh, yeah.
It's good.
Okay, we're going to mill around here and have wine in a little bit. People should tell each other what they should be reading. So I'm going to do one more poem, and then we're going to do these together, and then
We'll have a break. Kim does have some books for sale over here. What I said earlier about Jenny, it's me. So I'll be happily pouring friends members.
she knows how to twist your arm, doesn't
No pressure.
she? Okay.
But we'll continue with the open mic after a brief break.
Yeah, good. Okay, so part of my mission is to just be an eavesdropper, and you're just listening to the world, listening to things people say, listening to my dreams, listening to my own mind, and sometimes a little phrase will just come, and I'll write it in my little notebook, and without knowing what it's going to be, like, what is that? It just caught my attention. What is that little thing? And then the next day in my daily writing practice, then I open the little notebook and look back. So this was last July. I was just so troubled by the state of the world. I was just overwhelmed. My wife's wife, Karen, said at one time, every day you become aware of something that's been destroyed, ruined, made extinct, burned, defiled. What if every day you created something to talk back to all that darkness? It wouldn't have to be a big thing to be important. So, that's what I've been trying to do. I'm overwhelmed daily. I was glad to see people down here release the reports, holding up their signs. It reminded me of the Onion headline, "Man calls for immediate release of his endorphins." You know, but I want us to release our stories. I want us to plunder our reticence. So anyway, all I could do was go pick blueberries. You know, it was July, so I went to Corbett and the clock farm. I was out there, and God, everybody's in such a great mood in the blueberry field. You know, there are people from all over the world there. I hear many languages spoken. A lot of kids running around, all the blueberries they want, so they're in a great mood too. And I was noticing that I was kind of focusing on the big, easy picking berries up at the top of the bush. You're not supposed to do. You're supposed to get down on your knees, you know, clean the bush. But I was kind of going for the easy pickings, and I just thought of that phrase, easy pickings. Something about that phrase. So this is called easy pickings. It's easy to laugh in the blueberry field. Staccato plink and plunk as berries plummet into the pail. And you hear children banter in a dozen languages among the green rows. It's easy to forgive there, too. Viewing old betrayals sweetly diminished by the honeyed crush of berries on your tongue. It's even possible to imagine peace between people who hated each other before their children met between these rows and asked one another, "Shall we pick together? Come pick with me, my enemy, my angry self. Come, split couple, bickering over money. Come to the blueberry field, Palestine and Israel. Come bow and squint under the sun-splashed leaves. Come peer into these dark shadows for blue." Bethany. So which one do you want to do? Do you want to do the one for class or something?
Oh, let's do that.
Okay, let's do it. So Bethany was in the class I taught last June, and we were going around sort of introducing ourselves, and you know, people were saying, "Well, I'm a retired teacher, you know, or I came down from Seattle, I'm a writer." We got to Bethany, and she said, "Well, I play harp in hospice," and it just floored me. I thought, what a beautiful thing. When the words are gone, but the music connects. And so I asked Bethany if she would bring her harp to class and use it as a writing prompt. Just all my years of teaching, I have never witnessed such effective writing instruction, because she just began to play and we began to write.
I got no writing done.
Yeah. It's kind of a setup. She paid for work. But, so I wrote this poem called Writing Class with Harp. And it has four parts, and you'll hear them echoed in the music. Yes, we could settle for instruction. I could explain the structure of the essay or the rigors of writing great poems. But what's wrong with simple ravishing instead? Our pens were moving, just tuning up the mind. When Bethany embraced her harp, Shenandoah shimmered from the strings, and we were helpless, scribing truth long knotted in darkness, now deserving all our light, for the harp has no mercy with the soul. I'm a scholar with a PhD, and I have a lesson plan, a packet of readings for our edification and guidance. And this is graduate school after all. But Bethany has told us she plays her harp in hospice when all has been subtracted from a life but music and a long look. So we write under the spell of Scarborough Fair as if our lives depended on it, as they do. For the harp has no mercy with the soul. catalog online. This was described as a class for writers interested in pushing their practice in multiple directions. But here we dwell inside the mystic architecture of the old Shaker song, The Gift to Be Simple. And it's all simpler than the plan and deeper. There's more at stake than excellence. And so we scribble in gentle fury, more giving and forgiving, more patient and sure, for the harp has no mercy with the soul. Craziness abounds. Our leaders lead us into cruel, unnecessary drama of division without vision, of fear as the coin of the realm in the long economy of attrition. There is no other name than failure for what fills the news, and yet, when Bethany plays, the water is wide. In our boat to carry two, we scroll through all our long-hid kinship clues as we row with our pens across the page, for the heart has no mercy with the soul.
That thing I forgot to say earlier. The poet laureate is appointed by Governor Kate Brown.
It's back to the real world.
And is a collaborative project of the state's 5 cultural partners, the Oregon Arts Commission, the Oregon Humanities, the Oregon Heritage Commission, the Oregon Historical Society, and the State Historic Preservation Office, with funding from the Oregon Cultural Trust and poet lovers like you. I also will have over there, they've asked if any of you are just love a good form.
Wait a minute, I have to do that to get the wine.
Oh, that's a good idea. Sorry, we're requiring so many things of you. This is just the Oregon Humanities sends this out. If a few of you would like to fill it out, just talking about your experience tonight. It gives great feedback, as if this wasn't already a wonderful evening already. Thank you, Kim and Bethany. And so we'll take a very short break, 5-10 minutes. Feel free, there's books available, there's Friends memberships. I'm also going to run over there, and we'll be back here in about 10 minutes for the open mic. We have, I looked at the list, and we have some really wonderful community members who are going to share, so I hope you stay and hear what our local poet. So thank you. Thank you so much for just allowing me to do that. Thank you. Yeah. So we are going to the open mic portion of the list, which we can't do because I left the list over here. Paper Gardens is Yamhill County's writing contest that is hosted every year by the Arts Alliance. Entries have already closed for this year, but we are having an award ceremony in which winners will read. And there's kids. There's kids poets reading their kid poetry, and it's the best. There's adults too. It's all great. The guest poet judge for this year was Jose Angel Araguz from Linfield. The poetry judge for 2020 will be none other than Kim Stafford. So you have a whole year to work on it, but I hope that you will attend. It's the awards. May 9th is the awards this year. So I hope it's at the Sahagian Cultural Center in Newburgh. So it's just another great opportunity to hear from local poets, especially the kids, but also the adults. Thank you. Just for the record, if any of you are new reading tonight, we usually no soapboxing. I think that pretty much explains it. We want to hear your poetry, we just don't want to hear it all night long.
The bell.
I know, sorry, the bell, like all the power just went straight to my head. So we will go ahead and get started with the open mic and have Daniel John is our first reader. Come on.
My name's Daniel John. You know, how does a poet follow after a laureate? Hard act to follow, let alone go near the heavenly sounds of that harp. I feel like I'm a sacrificial lamb right now. Perhaps it started by saying words of another man. A quote, Sigmund Freud. He said, in the very beginning, words and magic were one and the same. And it is amazing to this very day that words still have much of their magical qualities. Isn't that why we're all here? To be enchanted, to hear some poetry? Something that's very important to me. Early 80s, 81, 19, 20-year-old kid, gonna go to Alaska, go north to Alaska, do the Alcan Highway, driving up the Oregon coast. I don't remember where it was, but it was one of those 10-year storms. It was blowing so hard that hard rain was coming down. I heard a voice as I neared this town. I don't remember if it was Seaside, Ghirardelli, Rockaway, Lincoln Beach, Pacific, I don't know. But that still small voice that we all as writers have inside that, I just didn't hear it, I listened. And when you see, always learn to observe. And when you're done reading, close that book and then reflect. For that's the beginning of knowledge, for it is not but our mere intellect, but our passion that pushes us forward. Driving up the Oregon coast, had that voice stop. Wind was coming off, it was hitting me like a sandblaster. No one was hardly out on the beach at all, if any. And there was this massive tree with this huge trunk that had been tossed up maybe in the 10-year storm before. I got there, and as I climbed up onto that, and I sat there, the wind, and I'm watching the waves, 25, 30 feet swells, and it's coming in closer and closer. Not just logs, trees are coming in. I mean, it was a storm. But I sat there with the sand like penetrating my face, taking my skin off, and suddenly, and I swear to you all, this is true, a man came around from behind the big roots, on the street. There was 150 yards to the ocean, 100 yards of sand behind me. I could see a quarter mile down the beach. That man appeared out of nowhere. He looked like an old fisherman. Stained, dirty khaki pants, shoes worth forlorn, a quilted sweater that had peeled and was unraveling, face wrinkled like the years at sea that he had been, and with that stocking cap that had folded up. And as we spoke, something magical happened. There was like a bubble, a seer around us. But I could still see the waves, I could feel the wind, but no longer was it blasting as we spoke. I swear to you, this is true. We spoke and we said things that seemed to be unutterable. But I remembered what it was he had said for decades. Remember, this is like 40-some years ago. I do remember this, and I've held fast to it as a poet. For I had always been this wanderlust fella out of my own thinking. The point is that he said, never explain your poetry. If you ever feel the need that you need to explain your poetry, you shouldn't have written it. The poem should explain itself. It was almost as though on cue the bubble burst and that wind hit my face and stung me. And I knew that he must have been ducked down, but as it softened a little bit, I looked and he was not there. He was gone. I could see on the beach and he was not there. So I got down and I went around the end of the stump and looked, and the man was not there. It reminded me of in the book of Hebrews, end of chapter 12 or 13, it says, be always ready to entertain strangers, lest you meet angels unaware. I think I got to stand before my creator someday and say, yeah, I met one of your guys. Kim Stafford here, doing that question and answer, he said, don't worry about the questions, write about your questions. Well, there's no way he could have known that I had done as such, and that's what I'm going to share with you. Questions. Is there a way for us to see what provokes us men to dream? Is passion the hand that tells the time? Or is it merely the shadow given from the sun's beam? And the Almighty, is he but a puppeteer? Are we simply destined to be on his strings? Did unicorns have only one horn? And the Pegasus, that horse, man, did it really have wings? Is the hand that rocked your cradle that someday may have to dig your grave? And do blinders keep the horse going straight? Or inevitably, do they enslave? Is there such a thing as tomorrow? Or is the only time we have, people, right here, right now? My ultimate question is, how long is eternity? And I finally realized it's not going to matter anyhow. Because maybe there are no answers. Maybe it is like what Shakespeare said long ago. He said that nothing is good or bad unless we think it. Then that makes it so. So I say, make your own decisions. Free choice is all a part of the scheme. Devise your own master plan. Submit it back to God, and if it's in his will, he's going to have you live your dream. So beware of what you dream for. Kim Stafford, the living proof that they do come true. I always like to close it all in a perspective. Perspective. If we could learn to time ourselves, not by flamboyancy nor by sitting on shelves, but perhaps by self-denial, or if you don't like those words, call it self-control, because if you let those things guide your life, my friends, I swear to you, it's going to rule your souls. And it is from those things in which we truly do learn. You see, the gift that's going to be given to us is something not a one of us can go and earn. So you ask, well, what do you need to do? Well, go out and learn. You bet you take in all that you can. Pass on your knowledge. Leave your tracks in the sand. Because the time will come when those waves are going to roll in, and they're going to obliterate our footprints to show where any of us have ever been. So just remember there's a judgment in all the things that you say and that you do. It boils down to this: get to know, love, and then share yourselves. Because remember, there's no one quite like any one of you. We're all special. All you got to do is believe. Trust your hearts. Better yet, follow your heart. It knows where it needs to go. I'm Daniel John.
Bonnie? Yes, thank you.
My name is Bonnie, and I wrote a poem called 1 Year Anniversary. It was nearly here, that dreadful day, 1 year since my husband passed away. I had cried so much that whole past year. Would I make it through Monday with no tears? I thought I would if I took a trip, be gone from all the tear-jerk things, surround myself with kids and friends, and feel the love that family brings. I boarded the plane and wondered who would sit beside me for the flight. I hoped they would be friendly. A pleasant person would be just right. I saw him come near, a handsome young man. He sat and we exchanged hellos. He too was glad to have lots of room for our knees and elbows. His attempt at a magazine crossword drove him to exasperation. We laughed then when I also tried and tossed it aside in my frustration. I pulled a crossword from my things and said, let's try one together. The next 2 hours we joked and laughed. My worries began to feel light as a feather. I told him the reason that I was on this trip was to be somewhere new on that awful day, to keep from crying the whole day long. He then said that that day was going to be his own birthday. Aha! A different reason to think of that day. I squealed with delight, for this was great. I think my deceased husband has set this up, because I know it could not be just purely fate. I was sure he sent this fine young man to steer my mind away from all those tears, to keep me in good company. But he made sure that he was too young for me. We told each other about ourselves, where we lived and what jobs we do. He helped me take a selfie of us. We even traded phone numbers too. The flight turned out so perfect it didn't at all seem real. Guess my hubby knew just what to do and how it would make me feel. I am much too old for this young man, but I liked him very much. I hope I've made a lasting friend. I'd really like to keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Priscilla?
Well, thanks. Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. This is so exciting for me. And thank you for the poets that went before me and paved the way. And I have reached the age of needing readers. So this poem I wrote from an experience I had. It had been something I had been needing to transform me. And I waited 26 years to be able to experience love for myself. And it was I experienced it through my body. And maybe many of you who have struggled with this have learned that we can't kind of think our way into new feelings. So a friend of mine asked a question, and this poem is about what she asked me. And I took her question home and I answered it. It's called Intimate Love. My friend asks, how are you over the image of God as angry Father? A smile expands across my heart. I feel the yes. Yes, I am. Can hardly contain the joyful knowing moment when I felt the delight, when nothing can stop me from grinning at love's coming out party. Not even the thought of death. There was no dying in that moment. Only my arrival home. And how can I make my words be enough to speak of such wonder?
that somehow to say with ordinary morphemes, Creator's love has touched me, sails as beautiful breath from my soul on heart tones of crimson and gold, only to tumble from my tongue as dry, brown, shriveled stems into the mire of air between my lips, your ears. I am utter lack in speech. And so I must rely upon the feel. I paint a portrait of intimate and tell her that I experience Creator as lover, that we are loved intimately, that this love is a consuming fire, that it is erotic and tender. It is the there you are and here I am of loving without conditions, or hurt, or bitter, or shame. It is pure and clean, forgiven, without bondage, for everyone. It is a drawing flame within and fueled by oxygen. It is that delicious O-shaped mouth of wonder on a newborn baby. You desire to kiss and gobble it up for all the goodness it is. It is those kindled and kindred moments of knowing between two hearts, two breaths, the ardent touch between the grass and toes. It is love experiential and side by side, a sensual exchange of the tenderness in the space we walk. The way of light revealing creation at the waking dawn and folding in of day that stirs desire, fuels expression of one's art. It is to be drunk with joy at being just a fiber, nothing more than lint in the handiwork of such a tapestry, yet draped, yes, draped in the garment of intimate love. And you cannot hold on to it. It demands to be given away. You open your hand and heart to love another, and there is no empty, only return. And it is even more than this. It is hearing your own soul's call to intimately love yourself. And it is waking acceptance deep within. And the opening your eyes to find that a lizard has been sitting all the while at nose length and watching you sleep, while you lay on desert ground. Eye to eye, see yourself, the other, and there is no anger, only delight in the miracle of such an intimacy.
Bethany? I think love might be the theme of the evening. I think that might always be true. Written on the side of the road, nearly weeping. He was only handing me my receipt, his gas-stained hands reaching through my window with a slip of paper I promptly discarded in the trash bag on the floor. But I had heard him breathe a deep, sad sigh as he walked up to the pump to perform the benediction. And so I said, I hope you have a good day. Like I really meant it, because I really did. I saw the look in his eyes when his heart caught the truth my heart was saying underneath. You matter. You are beloved. I love you. I love you. I could feel the shutters fall closed on my face as I looked away first, started the car, and drove off from the cathedral. Because people with propriety don't let their souls show in public. It is not socially acceptable to love this much, even especially the ones who need it most. And I am often afraid of the fire I would ignite if I let the flint strike. Love has spilled out all over the world. The fumes of love are heavy in the air. If I look, I can see it shimmer. Every day, be a falling spark. Shut off the sprinklers.
Hide the hoses. Let it burn.
Thank you, Bethany. Mike? Did you know that Mike will be one of the people that you see on Friday, April 19th at the on 3rd Art and Wine Walk at Ransom Tasting Room. So think of something really fun and random you want him to write about, and he'll do it. So,
Yep. Well, she already took that piece, so. We have a writer's group here, and we actually have it here in this room, second Monday. And there's a young woman that comes to the group, and she's been a poet since she was a child, and she just writes out of her heart about her youth and out of her pain and recovery. And I tend to write just kind of wherever I'm at. And she got me thinking about my youth and some of my experiences. So this is a poem that's sort of based on how I was raised. On becoming a bird. I once said I wanted to be a bird, to fly, to sing. Flying would be great, riding the wind, being unbound from the ground. Then they said, you'll sleep standing up. Your feet will swell and hurt. Your lips will be hard and crusty. They had a point. As a bird, I'll have luxurious plumage and vibrant colors, long graceful wings, an elegant tail, and precious designs. I'll strut and dance. They said, you'll either hop, scamper, or look confused. Worse, you'll be very unsexy. When your feathers fall out every year, you'll look ugly. They had a point. But as a bird, I'll be free. I'll fly. I'll sing a symphony of songs, songs of loneliness and longing, songs of hello and goodbye, songs of love and joy. You'll be eating seeds. They said, or you're choking down bugs and eating worms. You'll twitch always and look nervous and become a cat and be worried about being cat food. They had another point. I started keeping my wishes and dreams to myself. Okay, the other kinds of poems have to do with fantasies, and I tend to talk, I guess it's anthropomorphic. This is a poem from quite a while ago called Owl Music. Do not wait for the moon. It is already high in the night sky. I float up to meet you on a broken branch of a tall oak. We talk in soft tones back and forth, a bittersweet refrain, a lament, an enchantment, calling movement, calling blood. On its own search, we see it turn towards our song. We lift lightly into the air. Our hearts feel a surge of that ancient melody. Silent from above, your talons sink deep. The startled scream, a second sound, a muffled exhale of the last moment. Your screech razors through the dark, a sharp-edged music of death and desire. After we've eaten, we are silent into the dawn. The writing group is open to anyone. Please come by. And certainly, if you want to come by, and actually we may have an extra typewriter. If you want to try your hand at actually sitting down and improv on poetry, believe me, it's something to test you.
Thank you, Mike.
Bruce.
Well, I can see I'm not the only one who's had birds on my mind lately. Gathering around my home and nesting in places that were kind of surprising. This is called flare-up. You've likely seen birds express alarm, fluttering chatter when you toss branches on a burn pile, casting a spell of confusion and doom. You've removed their landmarks, sent their compass spinning, sudden castaways, vagabonds faced with compromised navigation. So long, favorite little perch. Au revoir, shady roost. Spark flames, light the tangled twigs, glowing combustion of bark chips helps consume your hoard of junk mail. While clumps of conifers smoke, sizzle, snap, exploding droplets of peach resin burst in miniature thunderclaps. The purification channel is wrapping up, marking the passage toward someone's heavenly clouds.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bruce, are you gonna be at Third Friday?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
I'll be there.
Dave,
Yeah.
are you gonna be at
Yeah.
Third Friday too? Oh. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's fun.
My name's David Holmes. I teach right down the road at Dunaway Middle School, and Kim was talking about how he gets middle schoolers to write. I lie to them, tell them that writing is rap, introduce them to slam poetry and other nefarious means, and somehow we come out with some writers and some beauty. I wasn't going to do this, but my students, I have the privilege of teaching leadership, and on April 26th, they're putting on a full day called Day Without Hate. And it's this idea that we come and we celebrate all that's right with life and loving each other and send positive messages. And so this is one of my responses to hatred. Some of you may have heard this, but I got introduced to slam poetry, and this is what came out of it. So rub me a raw piece of poetry, emblazon it on my chest, and I will wear it proud and speak it loud, my idealized tribal crest, and it will read equality. Except I know that equality is just another name for the melting pot, a place where all the ingredients are mixed and boiled into homogeneity stew, which tastes like bad porridge, a thin, gray gruel that has removed all the textures of mountain and desert and crushed the sweetness from every religion and blanched the spice that's deeper south and deeper in the soul. But it stabilizes the economy by writing revisionist history and editing America's scars with whitewashed patriotism and bland mediocrity. So ink me a new piece of poetry, tattoo it on my arm, and I will roll my sleeve up every once in a while to set its message free. Tolerance, sweet, just let it be. But to tolerate simply means not to hate and to put up with, not to embrace, like not rubbing out something that's illegal to erase. I don't want to simply tolerate the man that looks different than me, or my neighbor who bows and prays facing east, or the one that sees my gray hair and conservative dress and sneers at me thinking, you're like all the rest, just some right-wing Bible beater promoting fine society. What the hell do you know about a man like me? Nothing. I'm never going to pretend that I know what it's like to be looked at differently because of the color of my skin. But I do know that you are not something to simply tolerate. And so I roll down my sleeve and hide that tattoo. So etch me a new piece of poetry. Scratch it on my soul and I will celebrate diversity. I will honor your culture and eat your cuisine and banish my own ethnocentricity. So correct me if I mispronounce your name. And share a drink with me that will soothe my overspiced tongue. And the next time you see me, look at me a little differently. Simply a man extending my lighter colored hand. I don't want to be the enemy. So if you'll indulge me, I wrote this for one of my kids, and she was talking about how many different identities she had to put on throughout the day. And so I called this poem Hamlet's Choice. She is 13-year-old beautiful, just beyond the edge of childhood, and eyes well past that place. The three sisters she walked to school remind her that boys who talk with too loud laughter leave children behind. She dips her toes into identities and plays the roles forced on her, watching kids while mother works. She sends them to bed before homework in a finally silent house. Self is stretched too thin and she is too small to be so many people in one day. She puts on her schoolgirl face and comes to my class. She could be something else, something other than the cliche of a once beauty who never moved fast enough to leave this town. And she wonders if she gets to decide. For now, she dabbles, changes hats, and smiles like an extra in a movie, waiting for a lead one day to finally be given Hamlet's choice.
Thanks, David. Benjamin? And I should ask, we have one other person, but then I'll give anyone else who didn't sign up a chance to read. We allow that. So.
Look at that. So I totally forgot that this was an open mic. I was just excited to come get to see Bethany again. And so then I walked in and I was like, oh, this is perfect, because I actually went and saw Bethany and Mr. Stafford read recently, and he assigned us a poem. And so I wrote that one. So this is the poem that I wrote, but it's not actually written for Mr. Stafford. He assigned us to write, this was the quote. I hope you don't mind me quoting you while you're in the room. It's a little odd. But he said, a great poem is something we put in an anthology and force high school students to analyze. An important poem is one you give to someone that speaks to them in their time of need. So I wrote this poem for my students. I'm one of those people who makes them analyze poems. Yeah. But I thought I would write one for them as well, and I wrote it for all of you. It's called You. When the ship capsizes and the water is too cold and too much and fills my lungs, I will try to be buoyant enough that you can hold on to my corpse and survive. When the ground shakes and yanks out the foundation, pulling every beam askew, and the ceiling surrenders to its weight and proves my skull's fragility, I will try to land sideways, so you can wedge yourself in the width of my shoulders and survive. When the brakes go out on the city bus and the wide white crosswalk lines offer no protection, I may let go of your hand briefly, and my slow wit that can never invent the punchline in time will fail to alert my limbs, thus discovering the last joke. But I will try to be soft and absorb so you can rebound and survive. When the blizzard of all the little cold, furious, buzzing distractions I employ to hide from myself, melt away, and my need to be the hero in the center of the storm resolves into a man-shaped, soggy pile of drowned, buried, flattened, unread books. No hero, not much of a poet, sometimes barely a person, not much, but I will try. To say I love you, I believe in you, I do this for you, you. And I will try. To lift you, to hurt with you, to hold you, so you can smile and survive.
My name is Mike Paull. I live around these parts, and this is an adult home for kids. Or maybe it's the other way around, I don't know. Okay, so anyway, this is called Local Crow Implicated in Murder. I didn't do it, said the crow. You must believe. No one's ever caught me. Everybody knows that crows are thieves, crowed the rooster, bright and cocky. Hoot, hoot. Who are your cohorts? Demanded the right honorable owl. I should hate to have to file a report implying that crows are foul. It's well known that your kind flock together and make a mockery of bird decorum, said the owl, ruffling his feathers. Do you deny that to this forum? The crow, having heard it all before, hopped to the tabletop and spread his wings. We were all seeking something, he implored. My eye is drawn to shiny things. Do not all my feathered friends gather seeds, sticks, and leaves each day? No one seems inclined to apprehend the sparrow's range their jays. A robin cocked his head to listen, seeking a tasty worm for lunch. Instead, he heard the courtroom commotion. Who's on trial? He asked the finch. It's the crow again, replied a vulture. Who else invites such scrutiny? If robins were subjected to that kind of culture, you know there would be mutiny. Back inside, the crow squawked, why the fuss? As he eyed the owl's watch and chain. Maybe you all don't understand us. We're hardwired to obtain. Before a verdict was handed down, the local cat was seen nearby. Court is adjourned, screeched the owl as he spread his mighty wings to fly. The worm made a clean getaway and the crowd beat a quick retreat. A crow was spotted leaving the scene with something shiny hung from his beak. There's a lesson there, I think.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have anyone else that would like to jump in and share? I think you want to. Okay, yay!
So this afternoon, I was at McMinnville High School, and I had the honor of having Kim Stafford do a writing workshop for the students and some adults that snuck through. Thanks to Doc Savage. He gave us an assignment, and it was to write for someone. And I was thinking about the people that were in the audience, and I realized that there were several dancers, including my daughter, who were in the audience, and I thought, you know, I really appreciate their teacher. So this is for their teacher. The other lesson that he taught us was to look at titles and decide, you know, pick 3 different titles. One that's short, one that's long, and one that's kind of odd or shaped differently. And so the 3 titles that I came up were a guide, a teacher I know, a teacher who knows and grows a young mind. And I took the 3rd one.
Yeah.
Teacher I know cares. She stares and instructs. Teacher I know guides. She prides on dancers' understanding. Teacher I know shows. She grows these children into young women. Teacher I know mentors. She centers on their needs and listens. Thank you.
Do you have anyone? Mariena, okay. We like this.
So this is a poem that I wrote when I was teaching at-risk kids back when I was starting my career many years ago. I'm newly retired. And one of our students, Starla Goodenough, died in a motorcycle accident. And it was just very sad. And I wrote this poem for her family, her mother. And I was touched by what Kim had said, that we write the best poems for people to comfort them. Is that what he said? So it's starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I could, I wish I might hear your laughter, hold you tight, and know for sure that it's all right. We must believe you feel the peace that only comes with sweet release.
Yeah.
I also said it at my mom's funeral about 2 years ago. So it's a good poem to keep saying.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to surprise us with a poem? The last poem I wrote, I was really angry at my husband and walking my dog, and I used a lot of knife metaphors. So it's not good for public hearing.
I think that was a poem just
Thank you all so much for coming. We will be at, so this is a monthly thing we do. May 2nd, which I think is the first Thursday in May, we will be back at the gallery. We have Danielle Dwellian Carena, who is a poet from Salem, who will be reading. So thank you Kim, thank you Bethany, and thank you all for coming and supporting the library.